This week, it just felt like, wow, spring hit us. Wasn't that amazing? So awesome to just see that snow really start to disappear. With summer quickly approaching, my personal family is really gearing up for ball season. So my daughter, Penny, she plays softball or fastball or fast pitch. She does the one where they windmill it in there. Theo, he plays baseball. And my wife Tara and I, we love spending time at the Diamond in the summer. Like, it is just the greatest life in a lawn chair, bag of spits, cold beverage, you're just chilling in the sun, like watching the kids do their thing that they love to do. It is gold. And one of my favorite parts of watching ball is the walk-up songs. Do you know what I'm talking about? If you don't know, let me explain. So basically, each player chooses a song that they prefer, the song that it's usually like some kind of hype-up song, and when it's their turn to bat, the song plays. It gets them hyped, gets their teammates hyped, gets the fans hyped. It's this like great little moment before it's their time to shine. And if you've never really experienced anything like this, allow me to show you one of my favorite all-time walk-up song moments. This is from Edwin Diaz of the New York Mets from a few seasons ago. Oh yeah, am I right? I mean, I feel like I kind of want to get myself a trumpet player for my entrances out here, right? This might be something we should think about. Hey, how about this? Easter's next Sunday. Send me your recommendation for Paul's walk-up song, and I don't know, I'll see what I can do. No promises. But man, I love a great entrance moment. The anticipation, the hype, the energy buzzing in the air. And there are all kinds of entrance moments from across the world of sports. You know what I'm talking about. Whether it's LeBron James tossing the chalk before a big game, or Michael Jordan making his entrance through the tunnel. If you've ever watched a Vegas Golden Knights game, you'll know that they have one of the most amped up intros in like all of hockey. There's Ronda Rousey making her way to the octagon in UFC. Or maybe you're more familiar with this scene. This is the haka, the traditional Maori dance performed before the New Zealand All Blacks take the pitch for a rugby match. Or who remembers this scene? Do you know it? This is from Rocky IV. This is the entrance of Ivan Drago before he faces Rocky Balboa. And you know what's interesting is that none of these epic entrances are really that necessary when you think about it, right? It's like, why don't we just cut to the chase, get to the game? You know, the TV coverage could just start with like the puck drop or the opening bell. But an epic entrance sets the scene. It pulls everyone into the moment, builds the anticipation. And that's where we find ourselves this morning. We are 1 week away from Resurrection Sunday, the peak of the Christian calendar. And today is Palm Sunday. You know, it's like we're there. We can see the ring. We know what's coming. It's like we're in the tunnel. We're ready to make our way to center court. And today, we're going to read about Jesus' entrance into Jerusalem. And while it's not exactly a Timmy Trumpet moment, his entrance is very significant in giving us the right kind of expectations as we head into Holy Week. So if you want to follow along, we're going to be looking at Luke's version of this, found in the Gospel of Luke chapter 19, and we're going to start reading in verse 28. After telling this story, okay, real quick pause. I really wish I could explain the story Jesus just told. It's super fascinating. It's interesting. I invite you to read it, although just be ready. It's confusing and heavy, but anyway, we don't have time today, but there was a story Jesus told. After telling this story, Jesus went on toward Jerusalem, walking ahead of his disciples. As he came to the towns of Bethpage and Bethany on the Mount of Olives, he sent 2 disciples ahead. Go into that village over there, he told them. As you enter it, you will see a young donkey tied there that no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks, why are you untying that colt? Just say, the Lord needs it. So they went and found the colt, just as Jesus had said. And sure enough, as they were untying it, the owners asked them, why are you untying that colt? And the disciples simply replied, the Lord needs it. So they brought the colt to Jesus and threw their garments over it for him to ride on. As he rode along, the crowd spread out their garments on the road ahead of him. When he reached the place where the road started down the Mount of Olives, all of his followers began to shout and sing as they walked along, praising God for all the wonderful miracles they had seen. Blessings on the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in highest heaven. But some of the Pharisees among the crowd said, Teacher, rebuke your followers for saying things like that. And he replied, if they kept quiet, the stones along the road would burst into cheers. All right, let's try to wrap our minds around this scene together. So Jesus is on a journey to Jerusalem. And back at the start of chapter 19, we can see that this leg of the journey, it started in Jericho. And that's roughly a 30-kilometer journey. So it's a pretty decent walk, right? Like we're talking about walking from Lakeview Church to Martinsville, or like from Lakeview Church to Dundurn. So Jesus and his disciples, they're making this journey at the time of Passover. And this is not random. In fact, many people were making this journey, this pilgrimage, at that same time. Crowds were going to be gathering for Passover in Jerusalem. And this was a well-worn road that Jesus and his disciples were on. And on this pilgrimage, it's basically a climb from Jericho to the top of Mount Olives, where Bethany and Bethpage are located. And when you reach the top of the Mount of Olives, Jerusalem comes into view, 2 to 3 kilometers away. And this is a modern perspective of what that view is like. And then here's an artist's rendition of kind of what it might have been like in Jesus' time. This is Jesus, kind of standing in the shadows of the tunnel. It's like the boxing ring is in view. It's time for the walk-up song. It's time for the hype, right? Like if he's a boxer, this is time to put on the baggy hoodie, you know what I'm talking about? Get that swagger going. This is the moment, if you're a rugby player, to kind of round up the squad, to kind of get jacked up with the haka. At the very least, it's time to get your ride sorted, right? Because, come on now. If you're the number 1 contender, you can't be rolling up to Madison Square Garden in a Kia Sorento, right? Michael Jordan does not pull up in a Honda Odyssey, let's be real. So what kind of whip is Jesus going to take for his journey to Jerusalem? A young donkey, a colt. And his disciples, they lay their coats and their garments on the donkey in some kind of effort to make this more honorable. I'm sure they felt like, man, Jesus, he deserves so much better, but that's what they had to offer as some kind of way to acknowledge the significance. This is Jesus' coronation parade. And then they spread their garments out on the road. Other versions talk about they lay down palm branches on the road. Another effort to make a modest expression of honor and some way to mark the significance that they see in this moment. But can you imagine if you were like just someone else kind of wandering around, you're just nearby when this is all kind of happening, you're not sure, you're not aware of the context, but you see these things going on, this would have looked like some kind of cute ceremony among friends and family. You know what I'm talking about? Have you ever kind of like found yourself kind of wandering into one of those scenes? This happens at the airport sometimes, right? You're like there to pick up someone from the airport, but then you realize there's like a little crowd. There's like a little crew, you know? And like there's a couple kids with like homemade signs, and a couple people have balloons. And you're like, oh, they're welcoming someone. I don't know, it's like someone back from college, or like a longtime family member who hasn't visited for some time. And you see this, and you're like, oh, that's nice. They're doing like a little welcome. That's great. But can you imagine something so humble, so ordinary, for someone who claimed to be the Son of God, the promised Messiah, the long-awaited deliverer? This humble procession, it doesn't seem to fit. And then for his walk-up song, his followers, they started to sing one of those psalms that was often sung by people who were making that same pilgrimage to Jerusalem, the psalm that Lizzie read to open our service. And in Psalm 118, it reads, "Bless the one who comes in the name of the Lord." But Jesus' followers, they make a revision. They shout and declare, "Blessings on the King who comes in the name of the Lord." They recognize that in this modest entrance, they see who is before them. This is the arrival of the King. Now, around that same time, Pilate would have also made his arrival into Jerusalem. The Roman governor Pilate, he would have been over this region, overseeing things, but he normally resided in a different place in Caesarea. And during a time like Passover, the governor had to be in Jerusalem to suppress any uprisings that may want to occur. Because keep in mind what Passover represents. This was the annual festival where the Jewish people remembered how God had rescued their ancestors out of the hands of the Egyptian empire and freed them to their new destiny in the Promised Land. This was a feast celebrating liberation from foreign domination. And the Romans were very well aware of what this represented politically. This meant that the political passions of the people would be stirred up, and that people would be getting antsy and fiery, and there'd be this sense of like, maybe it's time to do something. And so Pilate would come to town to send a message that order would be maintained. And so coming from Caesarea, Pilate entered Jerusalem from the west, which is the opposite direction where Jesus came from, and most likely riding a war horse at the head of an imperial cavalry. And this entrance was a statement, a show of force to any kind of like intimidation, to any would-be revolutionaries. Because Pilate knew long before Ivan Drago how to intimidate an opponent. It's a stark contrast to the humble way that Jesus is described to have made his entrance. But the entrance of Pilate, it's not unique. We know this kind of entrance, this kind of statement, the kind of theatrics that are intended to send a clear message of strength, might, and intimidation. This is what political leaders do. They posture up and they make promises. I'm the one you need to trust. I'm the one who can set things right. I'm the one who will restore peace and security. And this is always happening. It's an ongoing reality. And yet, somehow, we find ourselves in a time when it feels like it's amped up to even a higher degree. Doesn't it seem that way? So much posturing, so many promises. Amidst all this posturing, the humble entrance of Jesus the Messiah cuts against the grain, reminding us that we follow a king who does not play the same game as all the other political leaders over time. While the Jewish people and the Romans were staring at each other, each side convinced that there's enemy over there who opposes them, Jesus was ready to confront both the Jews and the Romans with a direct message of opposition, but also a message of invitation. See, Jesus doesn't play the game of picking sides. Even though we want to believe that there are good guys and there are bad guys, just remember this, that both the Axis and the Allies had very messed up allegiances to Christianity. And the entrance of Jesus is a prophetic statement that pushes against the posturing and promises of the powerful. It is an invitation to join the humble pilgrimage of the Messiah who rides on a donkey. Will we join the crowd who lay down their garments for this king? While we know the scenes of political leaders posturing themselves for intimidation, we also know the scenes of people gathering to be part of a crowd. People aligning themselves with a cause, joining the momentum of a vision, rising up to oppose ideologies they disagree with, lending their voice and their affirmation to movements of change. We're constantly being told who we ought to stand for and who we ought to stand against. We're sold promises that if we align ourselves with this crowd, we're standing up for what is right and true and proper. And often those crowds are formed with some kind of imagination that there's another crowd out there who we are battling against. One of the most concerning examples that I've noticed in recent months among my friends in our community is a temptation to rally up as Canadians, because we've got ourselves some real enemies next door, don't we? Across a man-made boundary line, we see an opponent, don't we? And I'll be honest, I can understand the sentiment and the temptation. And for my friends who do not follow Jesus, I can appreciate why they would buy into that narrative that there's an enemy out there to get us, and we need to rally ourselves up against them. But I do not understand why, as followers of Jesus, we allow ourselves to get caught up in these games of posturing and promises. Our hope for confronting the enemy will not be settled on April 28th. We can submit our vote in election, for sure, do your thing. But we already have a king, and he is inviting us to follow his lead as he guides the way into Holy Week on the back of a donkey, robed in humble garments. Will you be among the crowd following him and declaring his entrance? Our passage continues. But as he came closer to Jerusalem and saw the city ahead, he began to weep. How I wish today that you of all people would understand the way to peace. But now it is too late, and peace is hidden from your eyes. Before long, your enemies will build ramparts against your walls and encircle you and close in on you from every side. They will crush you into the ground and your children with you. Your enemies will not leave a single stone in place because you did not recognize it when God visited you. So as Jesus approaches Jerusalem, he stops and he weeps. He weeps because he's burdened for the people of the city. He's burdened for his Jewish relatives who have missed the arrival of the king. They were waiting and waiting for the kingdom of God to come, waiting for liberation, waiting for rescue. And when it came, they missed it. Jesus declared that the kingdom of God was at hand. Follow me, and I will give you life and life to the full. And Jesus taught that the way to liberation was not going to come through violence, but love. He gave his manifesto, the Sermon on the Mount, a vision for how we ought to live in obedience to God, trusting God, surrendering to God, and taking up the way of Jesus as our way, loving our enemies, doing good to others, even those who might mistreat us. Jesus wanted all people to understand that the human-made divisions between us need to come down. The people that we think are our enemies, those people we ought to imagine becoming our sisters and our brothers. Or as the Apostle Paul put it, our battle is not against flesh and blood, not against other humans, but against the powers and principalities of death and evil that try to turn us away from God and against one another. Jesus knew that while some were following him and some had received him, the masses in Jerusalem had rejected him and his message. They could never trust that loving their enemies would topple empires. They remained convinced that the only way to dispel their enemies would be by playing their game of violence and aggression. And Jesus knew how it would end. Within a few decades, there would be a revolution that rose up out of Jerusalem against the Roman Empire, and Jerusalem would be destroyed in 70 AD. Now it is too late, and peace is hidden from your eyes. Before long, your enemies will build ramparts against your walls and encircle you and close in on you from every side. They will crush you into the ground and your children with you. Your enemies will not leave a single stone in place because you did not recognize it when God visited you. Jesus sees the devastation ahead for his city, and he weeps. He laments the inevitable pain that awaits his people. And maybe there's something there for us to consider. I recognize Palm Sunday is often a day of celebration and triumph, but I don't know. Maybe we need to learn how to weep for our city, to lament over the brokenness that we know is just so prevalent in our community. We feel the angst, we feel the ways it's not as it ought to be. And I know that, like, as Christians, there's a call for us to, like, rise up and get involved and help be a solution, a part of the cause, a part of setting things right. But man, there's also just got to be moments where we just see the things that are plaguing our community and allow it to break our hearts the way that it broke Jesus' heart. Our community that is, like, our libraries are closing down because there's overdose crisis is just too much to handle. People are dying in the downtown core and they're dying in the suburbs. The housing crisis is this, like, ominous challenge that's just, like, hanging over our community. Young people are struggling deeply with anxiety and depression at alarming rates. The child welfare numbers keep increasing while foster families are dropping off, unable to shoulder it. There's so much heaviness in our community, and I think maybe we ought to just see that Jesus says it is okay sometimes to just stop and weep, to just stop and let that burden hang with us, and to recognize that this pain of our community, it is real, and also to trust that when we weep, Jesus weeps with us. Jesus weeps for our city. I believe it. With 1 week away, this final stretch ahead, Holy Week awaits us. It's like we're standing in that tunnel, right? The center ring is in view. Are we ready to make the journey with Jesus through Holy Week. If you're like me, you might be feeling a bit of the buzz of the season, right? All the warmer weather, all the sports are starting up, there's lots of activity, lots of action, and I don't know about you, but like for me, the pace, it can kind of get to me. I can feel like I'm a bit scattered, like there's a lot happening, and I wonder if maybe it would be helpful for us to be a people who intentionally choose to like center ourselves on the way that Jesus is leading us through this coming week. And we've put together some resources to help you. If you want to intentionally embrace this journey, to join in with the crowd and to follow Jesus, you can go to our website where we've put together a few resources that you can walk through over the next 7 days. So a variety of spiritual practices that can help you kind of engage with your body and your heart and your head. Also, the Bible Project has a really great reading plan that weaves together some of their videos, and you can do that with a group of friends or your home church could kind of read along over the next few days as we make our way in preparation towards Resurrection Sunday. Let's make that journey well this season. Because the King is mounted on the colt. The garments are laid out for his entrance. He is about to make his arrival. Let's be among the crowd announcing the arrival of the King.